Hi, everybody. Hi, Rachel. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, I want to talk about the fire inside, but I'd like to back up and give a little context first. I mean, you got yourself into the film business as a cinematographer, which is sort of a famously male-dominated job. I mean, did you find it hard to be taken seriously? Did you find yourself not being welcomed the way a male cinematographer might have been?
I mean, on the one hand, you never know why your phone doesn't ring. So I can't say that I have an acute experience of not being taken seriously. I only actually know my own, successes, I guess. But I know that, we're such an anomaly and still are. I mean, it's crazy. I think at one point the percentage was 2% in studio movies. I think we got up to 4%. Maybe we're at 7%. I don't know. But like 7% in this day and age is not amazing. I think, I don't know. I think I've definitely had no shortage of stories of like being in a van. It was on the pickups for Black Panther. The first AD and I were in a minivan, and the Teamster wasn't leaving to go to set. And we were looking at him being like, we gotta go. And he's like, I'm waiting for the first AD and the DP. And we're like, that's us, dude. So that was like, that's basically still a day in my life, but you have to not take that personally. You just have to kind of keep pushing through.
Right. I mean, I imagine after you've done, Fruitvale Station and Black Panther and become the first woman ever nominated for an Oscar for cinematography for Mudbound, that people ought to know that, you're the one they're waiting for.
Well, this was pre any of that, but maybe now they do. Hopefully now more people sort of, look to different representation for both DPs, ADs, all the grips. My favorite key grip is a female key grip, actually, but there's still, I mean, it's still staggeringly low numbers given that, I think filmmaking is a medium that deals in the currency of human emotion and empathy, and those are things that I think women are inherently really great at, so hopefully we'll be getting our numbers up soon.
Right. Well, Fruitvale Station was really the one that pushed you to another level, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Fruitvale was the thing that certainly put me on the map. And then Coogler fighting for me for Panther. I mean, that's all Ryan Coogler is incredible, but you as an independent cinematographer, independent filmmaker, you pray that your director will fight for you when they finally get their big chance. And it takes somebody who's got a lot of backbone to do that, because every studio is going to try to surround a relatively new in terms of budget, an up and coming director with a DP who's made 1,000 studio movies before. So it took Ryan saying, no, this is my person, for me to get the opportunity to move up with budgets.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the keys in The Fire Inside, which is about Clarissa Shields, a 16-year-old boxer from Flint, Michigan, who becomes the first woman to win an Olympic gold medal for the U.S. in boxing, is that the movie takes us up to the gold medal, but there's a lot that happens after that basically falls into the category of what now? I mean, once you've, and I wonder for you, I mean, you got to the point, okay, you're now the first woman ever nominated for an Oscar for cinematography. Did you have your own sort of what now moments after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. One is I think that's incredibly relatable on like for everyone. I mean, whether it's your second grade spelling bee or getting nominated for an Oscar, nobody gets to stay on top forever. You always have to get up the next day and answer the question, what now? For me, I spent a year after the nomination, after Black Panther, reading scripts to shoot that weren't as good as either Black Panther or Mudbound. Mudbound, the issue, we made that movie for $9 million. So getting smaller films, but makeable, like somehow I found that the scripts I was reading weren't as makeable, I guess. I think because we were in the South, because of Dee's vision, like we were somehow miraculously able to make that for as little as we did. But I basically felt like every script I read felt like a step backwards, and I don't, for myself, I try not to take steps backwards, and so I figured it was better to start over and start from scratch and start directing and try something new than to go backwards as a cinematographer. You know, that said, like, if Denis Villeneuve had called me to shoot Dune, I'd still be shooting, but I didn't get that phone call, so I'm here.
Right. So, I mean, had you been thinking about making that move from cinematographer to director for long?
Not exactly. I'd had directors like Ryan, like Rick Famuyiwa, like, you know, pretty much actually almost every director I worked with as a DP said, you think like a director, you care like a director, you're a storyteller, you should be directing. And I'd kind of always push that aside because it wasn't, you know, I grew up with a camera in my hand. I love cinematography. I still love cinematography. It felt very natural to me. Directing was this like scary other thing. But I think, you know, you hear it enough and it starts to percolate, especially from people who you know, believe in and who believe in you. I think Coogler having so much faith, this vision for me as a director, that I was like, okay, well, maybe. And actually, it was John Ridley, who the writer of 12 Years a Slave, who gave me my first opportunity to direct, which actually predates any of this. He, based on a conversation we'd had at the Independent Spirit Awards, he or his people called my people up and said, he was doing a show called American Crime, and he said, you know, we'd really like Rachel to direct an episode, which, you know, I had never set out to do that at this point, but I also knew better than to look a gift horse in the mouth. And, you know, most cinematographers have to shoot 7 seasons of a TV show before they get that opportunity, and here I was being offered it, so I said, you know what, I'll try. And I did it, and it went really well, actually, and then I did another one for him, and that went well. And this is now, like, almost 10 years ago, I think, but the floodgates opened to episodic directing, and at this point I hadn't done Mudbound or Black Panther, and I was at this crossroads where I was like, I don't think I want to be an episodic director, and I know I still have more to give as a cinematographer, and so I actually told my directing agents to, like, we're going to hit the pause button, and I'll let you know when I'm ready again. And then I went off and I made Mudbound, I made Black Panther, and spent a year reading scripts that weren't as good, and now here we are today, where I called them up after that, and I said, okay, I think I'm ready now.
Right. So was reading those scripts that weren't good, was that the now I'm ready moment?
I mean, it really was. Like, I think it was, to be fair, actually, the now I'm ready moment meant that I started reading scripts to direct as well. I was reading for both. I was reading to shoot, I was reading to direct. Really, I'm a filmmaker and a storyteller first and foremost, and I was kind of almost like job agnostic. Whichever story, like I said, if Denis had come to me for Dune, I would be shooting. If, you know, Barry did come to me with Fire Inside, Barry Jenkins and Alicia Holmes, you know, brought that film to me, and they wanted me to direct it, and I saw something in that story that I felt like I could actually be additive to, and you know, that it felt like the right next move for me. But I was really reading, you know, in both spaces.
Right. So what was it about the story of Fire Inside that made you think this is the one?
The Fire Inside is the story of an incredible female boxer named Clarissa Shields, who's, you know, resilient both inside and outside of the ring, and nobody knows who she is. I mean, that, like, the fact that I had no idea, she's one of the greatest female athletes, you know, probably ever, and I had no idea who she was, and Barry didn't know who she was, and I think there was just something wrong to me about that. Like, so many biopics are about characters who are larger than life, and you actually almost don't need the movie, you know everything, and to me, it's sort of more interesting, the stories that, you know, don't usually get told, and so, you know, I think I also saw, she lives this, as a female boxer, she's, you know, by definition, the exception to the rule, which, as we were just speaking about, I'm quite used to as well. And the idea that it's not enough to just be good at your craft, you also have to, like, you know, fit into this mold of how to look, how to act, how to, you know, like other people's perception, you know, is kind of what makes you transferable as a, you know, as a recognizable figure, I guess. And I, you know, very much as a DP have had to walk that line too. So I think I saw some of myself, you know, in that story. And also, you know, I come from team sports. I love team sports. I love shooting action. I love playing sports. So there was just a lot about it that felt right.
Right. I mean, the idea of making a boxing movie, there is such this enormous history of great and not so great boxing movies, but how do you approach it when it's like, okay, now it's your cameras that have to get into the ring with, and you've got to bring something to it that maybe we haven't seen before?
We had sort of a unique challenge because we have a lot of fighting, but you don't really care about any of the opponents. There's one opponent you care about a little bit, but when you look at movies like Rocky or like Creed, the opponent it's all about the nemesis. It's like the story of, the protagonist versus antagonist. So I think our film was set up quite differently in that respect. And then, as you mentioned, we're an inspirational sports movie until we become almost an inspirational life movie. Like the movie's actually, for me, the heart of the film is what happens after the win, actually. So there was a lot to, there was a lot to kind of bring to the film outside of the boxing, but I think within it, my biggest question for myself was like, how do we not have fight fatigue, especially when you don't care about the opponents? How do we keep each fight feeling exciting? And so it was really about, finding different ways to shoot each fight and to light each fight, or different environments for the fights, so that you actually have a really different experience for, and maybe one fight resembles, the one in Creed, and another fight resembles something out of The Fighter, but I was never really looking to marry a look from another film. It was really about what felt right for this story. And the other thing, I guess, is that the film is based on a real person, which is unlike most boxing films, and it was really important to me that it felt grounded and authentic, that it didn't feel like glossy. And there are moments that are glossy, I hope, and moments that are, certainly theatrical. Boxing by nature is just such a immersive experience. You have two people hand to hand in a ring, closed space, the sound design. I come from cinematography. I always thought the reason you go to movie theaters is for the visuals, but I've had such a different, a transformative experience with this, realizing that so much of it is the surround sound, especially in a boxing gym, just like the sound of every, punch hitting or whatnot, or the hitting the mat. It really is about the immersive sound design. Anyway.
You also have, your leading lady is a young actress whose simple job is to be a good enough boxer that we can take her for an Olympic champion, and a good enough actress that she can go toe-to-toe with Brian Tyree Henry, who is amazing in this movie. That's a lot to put on a young woman, and Ryan Destiny is great in it, but how did you find her, and how did you get that out of her?
It was a real leap of faith that she was going to be able to box the way that she is. She does such an incredible job, and it was a little bit out of necessity, to be honest. I was looking for an athlete who could act, or maybe an actress who was an athlete, and wasn't finding either of those in strong enough proportions. And then Ryan came into her audition and just killed. It was one of those moments where I looked at Francine Mazer, was my casting director, and we looked at each other and we were just like jaws on the floor. But there was a real question about whether she was going to be able to become the boxer that she would need to be, and it honestly, it was her confidence in herself. And I looked at some of the transformations that we've seen on screen, and actors who've been able to transform their bodies or transform their athleticism, and I just had to hope that we would get there as well. And I think, maybe there was some part of me too that didn't know what I didn't know. We got really lucky that she got as good as she did, because I think I thought we'd be able to fake it more. And in the end, I think because of the way I wanted to shoot and how sort of subjective it needed to be, she does every single one of her own stunts in that movie. There is not a single stunt performed by a stunt person, and I don't think it would have worked if there was. So it's really a testament to Ryan and how good she got. Even Clarissa was just mind blown by some of the boxing in this film.
Mm-hmm. So how involved was Clarissa along the way?
Barry and I showed Clarissa this script. It was an early draft of the script, and I think we were worried about some of the more sensitive material. And interestingly enough, she was fine with all that. It was more she had a moment where she was like, "But I destroyed everybody at the Olympics." And you're like, "Well, in the movie version, nobody wants you to see you blow through all of your competition. We have to make it a little more exciting than that." But she got. I think it was more just explaining sort of how her life, how the movie version of her life was going to be, you know, an approximation, but with slight cinematic conceits. I mean, actually, compared to most films, we are very, very, very true to her actual life experience. So there wasn't a whole lot that we had to sell her on. And then throughout the process, you know, every once in a while I would text her about like what music she was listening to and, you know, things like that. But really it was, you know, just to have a creative guide. And then of course I was terrified to show her and make sure that we got it right. But thankfully she really, really loves the film. So.
Right. Were there things that once you're on the set, I mean, obviously you had done big TV shows, you did an episode of The Mandalorian, I mean, but were there things where it was a really steep learning curve, where it was like, oh, my career so far hasn't prepared me for this?
To be honest, it wasn't the making of the film. The making of the film, when we actually were making the film, because we got caught in a pandemic and some other things, but the making of the film went incredibly smoothly and was really just a joy. Like for me, I mean, Ryan and Brian, the chemistry you see on screen, you felt it on set too. There was so much respect and love for one another, and I think we all just had a really positive and great time making the film. I think it's more the idea that, like, I'd heard that directing can be a lonely profession, but in my mind I'm like, what do you mean? You're surrounded by so many people. But then it's like you're really the one carrying this, you know, boulder up a hill for sometimes years. And, you know, your DP fades away after principal photography, and then your editor comes in, and then you lose your editor when you move on to sound. Like, you're sort of this singular person championing a project from beginning to end. And I think that was new to me. You know, as a DP, I would get a call, and 3 weeks later I'd be shooting a movie, and 3 months later I'd be done with that, and then on to the next movie. So now to have a film that's like, you know, it's your baby, and it's sometimes a very long pregnancy and birthing process.
Right. I mean, obviously it's not out yet, so you haven't had the full journey yet, but at the stage in the journey you're in now, are you thinking ahead to, oh, I want to direct more movies, or are you thinking I want to become a cinematographer again for a while?
I mean, I had such a great first experience making this film that I think I probably do have the directing bug now. Ask me again after the second film, but no, right now I think the focus is probably going to be directing long form. I still love shooting, and so my hope is to keep shooting commercials, short form, just because then I can keep playing with gear and keep. I mean, it's still such a part of who I am, but I think dipping in and out as opposed to the longer form projects where it's going to take me out of directing for too long.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're out of time, but congratulations. The movie comes out in December.
Thank you.
Thanks.